You're listening to 66.6 FM, Radio TOVH, The Flush.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, okay, go ahead, dear.
All right, so I guess I'll just jump right into some questions that I have. As a listener from like an outside perspective, it seems that your music's become a little more introspective with time. I guess, how do you feel about that, or would you agree with it, or have you even noticed any sort of change?
I think it has certainly become more introspective. I think it's not like I care less about other people, but I care less about using what I do as a strictly entertainment tool.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I was younger, I used to really enjoy the idea of entertainment. And as I get older, I find that that's less and less appealing, to the point where I had to kind of search in myself and come to the conclusion that it's like, look, if you're going to continue to do this, it has to be about something that's of personal interest to you. Because if it isn't, it's like I felt like, you're a dancing monkey to a certain extent. It's like, what do you guys want to hear?
Yeah. It's like a lot of writers say, write for yourself and then find a venue for it later. And with music, it's the same thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it has to be a balance too, because if it's solely for yourself without any awareness of other people, then I think it becomes, you can very easily kind of disappear up your own ass with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's debatable as to whether or not I'm already doing that, but I think in my own mind, it could certainly be much more up my own ass. So I'm giving it some thought, at least.
Cool. All right. And in that same sort of vein, Empath was, or is, I should say, a fucking fantastic album. Was there a seed that sort of sprouted into that album, or a central idea that kind of grew into what Empath became?
I think I kind of got sick of my trip in a lot of ways. Just doing what I do professionally, and the amount of attention that it has begun to bring me is such that it's very easy, I think, to become a caricature of yourself.
Yeah.
And I found that happening, and I just got sick of it. And I figured that the best way for me to move forward was to, well, I guess, challenge myself in one sense, which I didn't know I was going to do when I started. But really, it started with evaluating my past, my relationship with each aspect of my past when it came to the sounds, and almost trying to make a best of album of my entire sort of scope of musical output, but with new music. And by doing so, I felt like I had the opportunity to sort of make assessments of my relationship with each one of those pieces of my work. And the title Empath, I think, implies emotional content, and the ups and downs of the music, like dynamically, I think conveniently played into that theme. And I got a question for you here, brother.
Yeah.
This is the last thing that I will request from you.
All right.
Can we take just a 5-minute break, and I will call you back?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you. I'll be right back.
Cool. Started you on Empath, sort of. It sounded like it was kind of a reaction to burnout.
Maybe, in a sense. I think it's also a reaction to middle age. I think it's also a reaction to boredom.
Yeah.
I just kind of got to the point where I felt like what I was doing was really safe. And as much as I think a lot of the stuff that I have done since DTP was active turned out really well, and I'm very proud of it. It just, I think if I'm being perfectly honest, I started to feel a little uninspired by it all. And
Yeah.
so breaking up the band, sort of shaking up my personal life, shaking up my creative world, was something that uh, I really felt was necessary. And if anything, that's where the genesis of this album came from.
Okay, cool. Let me figure out where I want to go from here.
Mhm.
All right. Oh, I guess in the vein of DTP breaking up, we have seen a lot of projects and bands of yours come and go. In your mind, have you kind of moved past them all and you're only looking ahead now, or are any of them on hiatus in your way of thinking?
No, I think they're all in the past, unfortunately,
Okay.
for those who would rather it not be. But I mean, I think that the function of whatever I do is to try and articulate my frame of mind in hopes that by doing so it will help me solve certain problems, either personally or artistically, as a result of just doing it. And
Hmm.
then once those problems are solved, it just no longer is of any interest.
Okay.
And then
Cool.
I also think that the parameters for what a rock band or a metal band um, is are is something that that I just felt that in itself I've moved beyond recently, where I just needed a bigger palette to sort of work from, and
Hmm.
yeah, I think that will probably continue to change as I grow, undoubtedly, right?
Yeah. Ever forward.
Oh yeah.
All right. Um, so personally for me, I love like genre mashups and fusion genres and all that, which Empath I feel featured a lot of.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy, especially in the metal world, I feel, A, for people to not really give genre mashups a try. I think metalheads kind of don't like their food to touch. But but it's also pretty easy for like these fusion genres to just completely fall flat. I think folk metal is probably one of the worst because a lot of times you just get dudes dressed up as cavemen and they've got like a Casio keyboard and they shout about beer. For you, what separates like a genre mashup or a fusion genre, like the good from the bad?
Well, I think for me personally, I never think of what I'm doing in terms of a mashup. I just think of it as what's appropriate. And I think as a result of that, it's not done from the point of view of trying to be provocative.
Hmm.
Like a lot of times when I hear fusion mashup type of music, I can't help but feel that they're proud of it. They're just like, oh, dude, check it out. And then it goes to a folk section. Isn't that weird? And then it
Yeah.
goes to metal. Isn't that crazy? You know what I mean? It's like,
Hmm.
and that's the furthest from the reason why Empath has ended up being what it is. It's the reason why it's ended up being that is it's just that's what felt appropriate for the music to do. And I think as you get older, as we get older, um, it would be foolish to think that we can only tolerate one dynamic for an
Hmm.
entire album anymore. I mean, I just, it's speaking of getting bored.
Hmm.
If 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 you look at a typical day in a typical life, it goes between a myriad of different things. You may
Yeah.
stub your toe and be pissed off for a second, and then get a phone call from a buddy that makes you laugh, and then you've got to go to a meeting that's serious and maybe doesn't go super well, and then you get some bad news, and then your favorite show is on or whatever, and that's the course of one day. So if I look at a song as being a stretch of time, similar
Hmm.
to a day or what have you, I guess the reason why the genre changes are within that song is just because that's what we're trying to illustrate is that's what happens in life. It's not about trying to appear clever because we're dumping a country section into a metal song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Uh-huh.
It's just that seems to be where it wanted to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, cool. So like an organic approach, and
Well, that was the hope. In fact, I've been told in interviews since it's been out that it kind of falls into the sort of genre mix up sort of category in a sense.
Mhm.
But I hadn't actually really even considered that until it started to become clear to me that it's like, oh wow, that is a lot of different things in one place.
Yeah.
Perhaps the reason, or perhaps the fact it didn't occur to me is the reason why it doesn't seem to be like doing it for any reason other than natural.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any big non-musical influences that you feel have sort of influenced your work and output?
All of it. I think that 95% of what I am influenced by is not metal.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it was important for me on Empath to reconnect with some of that metal because I think the tendency for metal musicians as we get older is to sort of distance ourselves from what we were. But I think a lot of what makes Empath work is me more accepting what I was, as
Hmm.
opposed to maybe over the past decade where I've denied the fact that strapping was everything to me for a decade.
Hmm.
Um, Now I'm just like, yeah, it was everything to me. So here's an aspect of that in my current work. And when it comes to bands themselves, I mean, it's hard for me to name names, but I mean, genres are easy. I really like down tempo instrumental electronic chill, basically.
Yeah.
And I like avant-garde classical, and I like Indian music, and I like uh, Native American flute music, and
Hmm.
um, a lot of things. I tend to prefer things without vocals,
Mm.
but I also really like I really like sort of strange avant-garde stuff, right? Like there's this lady that I've been listening to over the last couple of days. I forget what her name is here. Let me just remember real quick because I thought she was absolutely amazing.
Hmm.
Holly Herndon is her name, and I thought she was amazing. But when it comes to mixing stuff up, I remember first time I heard Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum as well,
Hmm.
thinking like, oh, that's brilliant. It's like super forward thinking and really
Hmm.
artistically astute, but also fucking intense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And and I like that. I like if you're gonna go down some avenue that's maybe a little artsy fartsy, which I tend to do. I
Hmm.
just want it to be intense still. I want it to be. I don't want it to be a joke usually, right?
Yeah.
Usually.
Like the genuine aspect of everything is important.
It is. It really is, man.
All right.
Then it can be used to an emotional effect as opposed to just, you know,
Hmm.
an, wow, wasn't that weird effect,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know what I was gonna say about that, but yeah, I do agree. Um, just because if I don't ask it, I know some of the commenters are gonna razz
Yeah.
on me a little bit.
Whatever you want.
What was it like working with Chad Kroger? How did that happen and why?
um, it was great working with Chad. Um, he's a brilliant dude, and he's really talented, and we're worlds apart as people. Um, but I think what we do, how we do what we do creatively, has a lot of parallels.
Mm.
And he influenced me because I saw his life, and I saw, what Nickelback money gets you, and not only what it gets you, but what it brings to you. And I realized that the reason why he's got that is because he's him. He's not trying to be somebody else. He's just being who he is, and
Hmm.
that's what happens with him. And it was inspiring for me because it made me realize I'm like, well, as opposed to trying to be something that I'm not, it's about finding what it is that you are and focusing on that. And so inadvertently, he really influenced me to sort of pursue the angles that I pursued on Empath, just watching him be him, you know?
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Just a couple more questions for you, and then I
Yeah,
can
dude. No
set you
problem.
free. In that vein, what artists would you still like to collaborate with? And this, we're going to go into the realm of the absurd, living or dead. Who would be like your dream collaboration team?
I have none. I have no dream collaboration team.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, it's like such an abstraction. I think a lot of times have this assumption that if you got a bunch of people together that you liked all their music, say you're a fan of Jimi Hendrix, you're a fan of James Hetfield, you're a fan of John Entwistle, you're a fan of Mozart, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
John Bonham, whatever. There's a
Hmm.
good chance you put that band together and it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, most of these things don't become like the sum of the parts.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the reasons why certain bands work is because they're not all features. You know,
Hmm.
they're not all virtuosos or visionaries or whatever the term is that people want to use, right?
Hmm.
So I think in my mind, uh, any of these great players from the past that I think of, I also sort of have to juxtapose that with there's a good chance I wouldn't get along with that fucking guy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I have a hard enough time getting along with people that I really care about, let alone a bunch of people from different times of history.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, without being a smartass, like I just don't, I have nobody that I pine for in terms of
Hmm.
working together.
Cool. All right. And I think we're reaching that 20-minute mark cumulatively. So I'll ask this parting question. It's one I always got when I would visit home from school, and I visit my old music teacher, and she'd be teaching a lesson, and then she would say, "Do you have any advice for someone who's just starting out or someone who's in the middle of their journey?" So in that vein, do you have any advice for beginning or intermediate creatives? Just parting words of wisdom.
Yeah, I do, actually. The thing that separates people um, from the echelon that you tend to be when you're in the beginning to the echelon that you get, not even when you're at the top, because I'm certainly not at the top, but at the point I'm at least is all I can reference. The thing that separates it is being able to get back up after you fail.
Hmm.
And failure doesn't necessarily mean, you know, I put out a record and it wasn't successful or uh, anything. What it really means is like maybe you let somebody down because you acted like a cock one day.
Hmm.
You know, you let it go to your head and then you say some stupid douchey shit and then you feel like an asshole.
Hmm.
There's a good example. Getting over that feeling of like, oh, I'm an asshole, and just learning how to not do it again
Hmm.
is really a big thing. And another example of failure is like maybe you play a show that wasn't bad, but also wasn't great.
Hmm.
And that was the first show that your agent came out to, your potential manager came out to, your mom and dad came out to, your girlfriend or boyfriend came out to.
Hmm.
And you come off stage and you can tell everybody's underwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really easy to view these things as like it can throw you into these sort of existential tizzies where you're just like, oh my God, I shouldn't be doing this. I should,
Hmm.
you know, all these sorts of things. But that's another example of failing, quote unquote. And it's about learning to efficiently get over that. So you can keep getting back up and keep getting back up because the people that manage to get to that next echelon are usually the ones that just have the personal resilience to persevere. So
Hmm.
music is one thing, being proficient at your instrument and writing good songs is absolutely important. But the ability to kind of let shit go that isn't up to what you hoped for is the thing that has helped me and continues to help me the most, because I still struggle with it every day, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, Devin, it was great talking with you.
You too, buddy. Thank you for the interview, and thanks for holding while I went and took a shit.
Hey, no worries. All right. Hopefully you don't have any more fun times in the bathroom tonight. So.
Well, it wasn't fun, so whatever times it will have, I'm up for.
All right.
Thanks, buddy. I will talk to you soon.
Yep. See you later.
Bye-bye.